I am Amelia, 27 years old, standing frozen as police officers handcuff the man who had been stealing from my family for 15 years. The shock paralyzes me as I stare into the face of the real thief. For most of my life, my parents pointed fingers at me, accused me of taking things that were never in my possession. Their suspicion destroyed my trust, shattered our relationship, and altered the course of my entire life. Let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button, because this story about family betrayal might change how you look at the people closest to you. Our family lived in a comfortable suburban home outside Boston. My father James worked as a bank manager, always dressed in crisp suits with polished shoes. My mother Sarah was an accountant, precise and detail-oriented in everything she did. My older brother Daniel was the golden child, a straight-A student with dreams of becoming a doctor. Then there was me, 12 years old at the time, the creative one, the dreamer who preferred paintbrushes to calculators. We had a nice 2-story house with a well-kept lawn and flower beds my mother tended every weekend. Each of us had our own bedroom. Mine was painted light blue with clouds I had added myself. My parents had the master suite downstairs, while Daniel and I had rooms upstairs across from each other. Our life seemed normal, happy, even until one Sunday afternoon in October. We had hosted a family gathering to celebrate my grandmother's 60th birthday. Aunts, uncles, and cousins filled our house with laughter and conversation. I spent most of the party showing my younger cousins how to draw cartoon characters in the backyard. 3 days after the party, I heard my mother scream from her bedroom. I rushed downstairs to find her frantically pulling out drawers and emptying jewelry boxes onto the bed. "My diamond ring is gone," she cried, her voice trembling. "The one Grandma gave me before she died." I had seen that ring many times, a vintage piece with a central diamond surrounded by smaller stones. My mother only wore it on special occasions, keeping it safely in a velvet box the rest of the time. My father came running from his home office. "What do you mean, gone? Did you check all your jewelry boxes?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I wore it during the party and put it back that night. I wanted to wear it to dinner with the Andersons tonight, but it is not here." Daniel appeared beside me in the doorway. "Maybe you misplaced it somewhere else in the house." The next few hours turned into a full-scale investigation. Everyone searched every corner of the house. When we found nothing, my father gathered us in the living room for what felt like an interrogation. "Has anyone seen your mother's ring?" he asked, his eyes moving between Daniel and me. We both shook our heads. "Has anyone been in our bedroom in the last few days?" he continued. Daniel immediately said no. I hesitated, remembering I had gone in to borrow nail polish from Mum's dresser the day before. "I was in there yesterday to get some nail polish," I admitted. "But I did not go near your jewelry boxes, I promise." My mother narrowed her eyes. "The jewelry box was on the same dresser as my nail polish." I felt my stomach tighten. "I know, but I just grabbed the polish and left. I did not touch anything else." My father sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Has either of you taken anything that did not belong to you recently? Even something small, Dad?" Daniel protested. "You cannot seriously think one of us took it. We need to consider all possibilities," my father replied firmly. My mother turned to me, her eyes red from crying. "Amelia, you bought those expensive art supplies last week. Where did you get the money for those?" My heart started racing. "I saved up my birthday money and allowance," I explained. The art supplies had cost nearly $200, a set of professional watercolors and brushes I had been saving for months to buy. "That much from allowance?" My father questioned his tone, making it clear he did not believe me. "And birthday money from Aunt Lisa," I added quickly. She always gave generous gifts. My parents exchanged a look I could not quite interpret. "Your room." Now my father commanded. They followed me upstairs and began searching through my belongings. They checked my drawers, looked under my mattress, and emptied my backpack. My mother even went through my art supplies as if a diamond ring might be hidden among my paintbrushes. Finding nothing, they moved to my closet, where they discovered a shopping bag with a new sketchbook I had not shown them yet. "What is this?" "How much did this cost?" my father demanded. $20, I said quietly. I bought it with the leftover money. "So nearly $220 in total," my father calculated. "That is a lot of saved allowance, Amelia." I started to cry. I did not take the ring. I would never steal anything, especially not from Mum. But they did not believe me. I could see it in their eyes. The seed of suspicion had been planted. Though they did not say it directly, they thought I had taken the ring and sold it, or hidden it somewhere to pay for my art supplies. The ring never turned up. My mother reported it missing to the insurance company, but in our home, the case remained open with me as the prime suspect. That night, I heard my parents whispering in the hallway. "She has been different lately," my mother said. "More secretive." "She is almost a teenager," my father replied. "They all get secretive at that age." But the timing, Sarah insisted, and those expensive art supplies. We should keep a closer eye on her. That was the beginning of my new reality. A reality where in my family home I was no longer trusted. A reality that would shape the next 15 years of my life in ways I never could have imagined. The months following the missing ring incident established a pattern that would define my teenage years. Items continued to disappear from our home, and each time suspicion fell squarely on me. 6 weeks after the ring vanished, my father discovered his Rolex watch was missing from his dresser drawer. It was an anniversary gift from my mother, worth several $1,000s. He had worn it to a work dinner the night before, and distinctly remembered placing it in his drawer before going to bed. "Has anyone been in our room?" he demanded at breakfast, his face flushed with anger. Daniel immediately shook his head. "I had been in the master bathroom earlier that morning to borrow mouthwash when mine ran out. I just went in to get mouthwash," I explained. "I did not go near your dresser." My father did not believe me. How convenient that things keep disappearing when you happen to be nearby, Amelia. "Mom, I did not take anything," I pleaded, turning to my mother for support. She just sighed, looking tired and disappointed. "We will be installing a security system next week." True to her word, my parents had a security company install sensors on our doors and a keypad by the front entrance. Curiously, they only secured the main doors, leaving the windows and back gate without monitoring. This oversight would prove significant years later, though none of us realized it at the time. 3 months after that, on Daniel's 16th birthday, our extended family sent cards with money tucked inside. He collected over $300, which he planned to put toward a new laptop. He stored the cash in his desk drawer, but 2 days later, it was gone. "I know it was you," he accused, bursting into my room without knocking. "You are the only one who has been in my room." I had borrowed a calculator from him for homework the night before, but I swore I had only gone to his desk and straight back out. "You are lying," he yelled. "You have always been jealous that everyone gives me more money than you." "That is not true," I protested, though the accusation stung because there was some truth to it. Our relatives did tend to give Daniel more expensive gifts, recognizing his academic achievements while often overlooking my artistic ones. Daniel stormed out and reported the missing money to our parents. They searched my room again, but found nothing. Still, the damage was done. My brother, who had once been my ally, now regarded me with the same suspicion as our parents. By the time I turned 14, my mother's laptop disappeared from the kitchen table where she had been working. She had stepped away for a phone call, and when she returned 20 minutes later, it was gone. I had been home alone with her working on an art project in the dining room adjacent to the kitchen. "That computer had all my client files," she cried. "I had not even backed everything up yet. I did not take it, Mom," I insisted. "Why would I steal your laptop? To sell it?" she suggested, her voice cold. "For money to buy whatever it is you are spending money on." "I am not spending money on anything," I shouted back, my patience finally snapping after years of accusations. "I have barely left the house in weeks because you and Dad watch me like I am some kind of criminal." The accusation hung between us, painful, because we both knew it was true. My parents had begun restricting my activities outside the home, insisting I come straight back from school, limiting my time with friends, and questioning every purchase I made, no matter how small. Our home became a prison of suspicion. My father installed a lock on his home office door. My mother began counting the cash in her wallet each night and writing down the amount. Daniel kept his bedroom door locked whenever he was not inside. The constant suspicion took its toll on me. I developed anxiety that manifested in stomach aches before school. I had trouble sleeping, often lying awake, replaying the accusations in my mind, wondering why my family refused to believe me. My self-esteem plummeted as I internalized the notion that I was untrustworthy, somehow deserving of this treatment. The worst part was the loneliness. Family dinners became tense affairs with stilted conversation. No one wanted to discuss the missing items openly, but they hung in the air between us, unspoken but ever present. Daniel increasingly spent time at friends' houses rather than at home with me. When relatives visited, I noticed how they kept their purses closer, checked their pockets more frequently when I was nearby. I became the family pariah, the suspected thief no one trusted but everyone watched. And all the while I knew I was innocent, screaming the truth into a void where no one could or would hear me. By 16, I had grown tired of fighting the losing battle for my innocence. If my family was determined to see me as a thief, perhaps I should become one. I dyed sections of my naturally brown hair purple, started wearing dark clothing, and befriended a group of students my parents would never approve of. Jamie, with her multiple piercings and encyclopedic knowledge of classic rock. Zach, who skipped classes to smoke behind the gymnasium. Diana, whose parents were rarely home, making her house the perfect hangout spot away from watchful eyes. They did not judge me or look at me with suspicion. They accepted me as I was, or at least as I presented myself to be. One afternoon, in a moment of rebellion and pain, I did something I had never done before. I took a pair of silver earrings from my mother's jewelry box. They were not particularly valuable, just simple studs she rarely wore. I did not take them to wear or to sell. I took them to prove I could, to embrace the identity that had been thrust upon me for years. I kept them in my pocket all day, feeling the weight of them like stones. That night, overwhelmed with guilt, I returned them to her jewelry box while she showered. The act brought me no satisfaction, only a deeper sense of shame. Even in my attempt to become what they thought I was, I failed. I was not a thief at heart, no matter how much my family believed otherwise. My grades began to suffer as I invested less effort in school. What was the point of trying when everyone was waiting for me to fail? I was suspended twice, once for skipping classes, another time for talking back to a teacher who had made a comment about watching her purse around certain students, her eyes pointedly fixed on me. Each incident at school only reinforced my parents' belief that I was spiraling out of control. They did not see a reaction to years of false accusations. They saw confirmation of their suspicions. The girl who would steal from family would naturally cause trouble elsewhere too. In the midst of this darkness, a single light appeared in the form of Ms. Thompson, my art teacher. Unlike others who saw only my defensive exterior, she noticed the emotion and talent in my artwork. "You have a gift for expressing complex emotions, Amelia," she told me one day after class. "The way you use colour and shadow shows remarkable depth." For the first time in years, someone was seeing something in me beyond suspicion. Ms. Thompson invited me to join after-school art sessions, where she mentored talented students. Those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons became my sanctuary, the only place I felt valued and trusted. Under her guidance, I created what would become my most significant work in high school, a large canvas titled Invisible Cages. It depicted a girl surrounded by transparent barriers, with watching eyes peering through from all sides. The piece was raw and painful, pouring my experiences into visual form. The painting won first place in a regional arts competition, earning a small write-up in the local paper. I waited for my parents to comment to attend the small ceremony, to show any pride in my achievement. They did not. My father was busy with a work event. My mother claimed a headache. Daniel did not even know about the competition, as we barely spoke by that point. Ms. Thompson attended instead, her presence both a comfort and a painful reminder of what family support should look like. After the ceremony, she took a photo of me beside my painting, the only evidence I have of that achievement. "I am so proud of you, Amelia," she said. "You have turned your pain into something powerful. That is what real artists do." Her words cemented my determination. Art would be my escape route, my path away from the cage my home had become. I applied to every art school that offered scholarships, spending hours in the school library, researching options and completing applications without my parents' knowledge. When the acceptance letter from Rhode Island School of Design arrived with a partial scholarship, I hid it from my family until the day after graduation. I had already accepted cent in my deposit from money I had saved, working part-time at a local cafe, and arranged housing with a roommate. The night I finally told them my plans, my father scoffed. "Art school? How do you plan to support yourself with an art degree?" "I have a scholarship and savings," I replied calmly. "I do not need your financial support." My mother looked hurt, though whether from my secrecy or my departure I could not tell. "I just think you should consider something more practical, Amelia, like what I asked. More years under this roof being treated like a criminal for things I never did. No thank you." The words hung in the air, the most direct confrontation of our family dynamic in years. 3 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into my used car and drove away from Boston without looking back. At 18, I was finally escaping my invisible cage, determined to build a life where I was not defined by others' suspicions. My first glimpse of freedom came in the form of a tiny apartment near campus, shared with a roommate named Jessica, who had transferred from a community college in California. The space was small with creaky floors and a temperamental radiator, but it was mine, a place where no one watched my every move or questioned my integrity. Jessica became my first real friend since childhood. A photography major with an infectious laugh and a collection of vintage cameras, she knew nothing about my past or the cloud of suspicion that had followed me for years. To her, I was simply Amelia, the talented painter, who kept her side of the room meticulously organized. That organization was not natural to me, but rather a manifestation of my deepest fears. I photographed my belongings regularly, keeping a detailed inventory in a notebook. I developed habits that bordered on obsessive, checking my wallet multiple times a day, counting my art supplies each night, always knowing exactly where every possession was placed. The first time Jessica borrowed a sweater without asking, I had a panic attack. She found me hyperventilating in our shared bathroom, convinced I would somehow be blamed for the missing item. "Whoa, calm down," she exclaimed, confused by my reaction. "I just borrowed it for my morning class because I spilled coffee on mine. I was going to wash it tonight." Her confusion gradually turned to concern as she witnessed more of my unusual behaviors. After several months of living together, she gently suggested I might benefit from talking to someone at the university counseling center. "I don't want to overstep, but sometimes you act like someone who has been through something really traumatic," she said carefully. "The way you guard your stuff, how anxious you get when things aren't where you left them. It's not typical Amelia." I resisted at first, defensive and embarrassed. But after I had a complete meltdown, when a library book went missing, it had fallen behind my desk, I finally made an appointment. Dr. Lauren was a calm, thoughtful woman in her 50s, who listened more than she spoke during our first session. As I hesitantly shared pieces of my family history, she took notes and occasionally asked clarifying questions without judgment. After several sessions, she helped me name what I had experienced: psychological abuse and scapegoating within my family system. Even without physical violence, what you experienced was a form of abuse. "Amelia," she explained, "being constantly accused and mistrusted, especially by the people who should provide unconditional love and security, creates profound trauma." Our weekly sessions became essential to my healing process, a space to unpack years of internalized shame and doubt. I began to understand that my hypervigilance around possessions, my anxiety in relationships, and my difficulty trusting others were not character flaws but trauma responses. During my second year of college, I attempted to visit home for Thanksgiving, hoping that distance had improved our relationship. The visit lasted less than 24 hours. My father accused me of taking $60 from his wallet within hours of my arrival. When I denied it, the familiar pattern emerged: disbelief, interrogation, thinly veiled threats to search my bags. "I am not doing this anymore," I announced, grabbing my overnight bag. "I did not take your money. I have never taken anything from this house. But none of you have ever believed me, and you never will." My mother tried to intervene. "Amelia, don't be dramatic. No one is accusing you of anything." The gaslighting was the final straw. Dad literally just accused me of stealing. Again, after years of this, I am done pretending we are a normal family. I am done being your scapegoat. I walked out the door, ignoring their calls to come back, and drove the entire way back to Rhode Island. That night, tears blurring my vision so badly I had to pull over twice. The next day, I blocked their numbers and email addresses. I sent a brief message to Daniel explaining my decision to cut contact. He responded with a single line: "Maybe when you grow up and take responsibility, we can talk." I blocked him too. For the next 4 years, I lived without family. I spent holidays with Jessica and her parents, who welcomed me warmly. I graduated with honors, my senior exhibition receiving recognition from several local arts publications. No family members attended my graduation ceremony. Instead, Ms. Thompson drove 6 hours to be there, bringing with her a card signed by some of my former high school art classmates. Her presence was a powerful reminder that family is not always defined by blood. After graduation, I moved to New York City, drawn by its vibrant arts community. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn and found work as a junior graphic designer at a small advertising firm while building my portfolio of illustrations on the side. The city embraced me, anonymous among millions, free from the weight of my past. For the first time in my life, I was known only by what I created, not by what I had been accused of taking. By 27, I had built a life I was proud of. My illustrations appeared in several major publications, and I had recently secured a contract to illustrate a children's book series. My tiny apartment had evolved into a comfortable one-bedroom with a separate studio space, where I worked on both commercial projects and personal art. The walls of my apartment displayed no family photos, only artwork from friends and artists I admired. My dining table rarely hosted more than 2 or 3 people at a time, usually fellow artists or colleagues from the design world. It was a small life in some ways, but one entirely of my own making. One crisp October evening, I met Michael at a gallery opening in Chelsea. He was photographing the event for a local arts magazine, his camera catching my genuine laugh as a friend told an outrageous story by the wine table. "That is a great shot," he said, showing me the preview on his camera screen. "You have the kind of laugh that makes other people want to laugh too." Michael was different from anyone I had dated before. Thoughtful and patient, he asked questions about my art and actually listened to the answers. He shared stories from his photojournalism trips around the world without dominating the conversation. Most importantly, he never pushed when I was vague about my family, seeming to understand instinctively that some topics were difficult territory. After 6 months of dating, as we grew closer, I finally shared the full story of my childhood and estrangement from my family. We were sitting on the floor of my apartment, takeout containers scattered around us, when he asked if I'd be joining him for his family Easter gathering. "I don't really do family holidays," I explained, then found myself continuing sharing details I'd never told anyone outside of therapy. Michael listened without interruption, his expression shifting between disbelief and anger on my behalf. When I finished, he simply took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said quietly. "I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you." His response brought tears to my eyes. There was no demand for reconciliation, no suggestion that family ties should be maintained regardless of harm, just acknowledgement and respect for my experience. As our relationship deepened over the next year, Michael gently encouraged me to consider whether I wanted to attempt any contact with my family. Not because I owed them forgiveness, he clarified, but because the unresolved relationship seemed to still cause me pain. Sometimes closure isn't about forgiving them, he suggested. It's about freeing yourself from carrying it all. I was considering his words, beginning to wonder if limited contact might be possible someday, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize one Sunday morning. Michael and I were planning a day at Coney Island, enjoying the first truly warm weekend of spring. "Hello," I answered hesitantly. "Amelia?" The voice was familiar, but older, deeper than I remembered. "Yes, who is this? It's Daniel, your brother." My hand trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. How did he get my number? What could he possibly want after 9 years of silence? "What do you want?" I asked, my voice colder than intended. His response shattered my carefully constructed world. "It's Mum. She's sick, Amelia. Really sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors are saying maybe 3 to 6 months." The room seemed to spin around me as conflicting emotions collided. Anger at this intrusion into my life. Grief for the mother I had lost long before this diagnosis, fear of facing the family that had caused me so much pain, and beneath it all, a small, persistent voice whispering that despite everything, this was my mother. "I need time to think," I managed to say, before hanging up. Michael found me sitting on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating. After helping me through the panic attack, he sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Whatever you decide." "I'll support you," he promised. "If you want to go, I'll go with you. If you want to stay away, that's valid too." For 3 days, I debated my options, calling Dr. Lauren for an emergency session to help process the news. In the end, I made my decision not out of obligation or even forgiveness, but from the recognition that I needed to face my past one final time to truly move beyond it. The flight to Boston felt surreal, Michael beside me, holding my hand throughout the journey. I had not been back to Massachusetts in 9 years, though the landscape out the airplane window looked unchanged. The same winding coastline, the same dense patches of trees now turning golden with early fall colour. My father answered the door looking much older than I'd expected. His hair had turned completely grey, his posture slightly stooped. The moment hung between us, awkward and loaded with unspoken words. "Thank you for coming," he said, finally stepping aside to let us in. "Your mother will be glad to see you." Daniel appeared from the kitchen, also changed. The confident teenager was now a tired-looking man in his 30s with the beginnings of our father's receding hairline. Unlike our father, he pulled me into a brief, stiff hug. "This must be strange for you," he said quietly. "I appreciate you coming." Michael introduced himself, his presence beside me, providing the strength I needed to walk back into the house that had been the site of so much pain. My mother lay in a hospital bed that had been set up in the former dining room. The vibrant, meticulous woman I remembered was now frail and yellowed, her skin stretched tightly over prominent bones. Her eyes, however, were the same sharp ones that had once looked at me with such suspicion. "Amelia," she whispered, reaching out a bony hand. "You came." I took her hand, surprised by the surge of emotion I felt. Despite everything, this was the woman who had once sung me to sleep, who had taught me to read, who had proudly displayed my elementary school art projects before the suspicion began. I confirmed, unsure what else to say after so many years. That night I refused to sleep in my old bedroom, opting instead for the couch in the living room. The thought of returning to that space with its memories of searches and accusations was unbearable. Michael took the floor beside me, refusing the guest room Daniel offered. "Are you okay?" he whispered in the darkness. "I don't know," I admitted. "Being here feels like stepping back in time. I'm waiting for something to go missing and everyone to look at me." He reached for my hand in the darkness. "If that happens, we're on the first flight back to New York. But maybe it won't." His optimism seemed misplaced, but I clung to it anyway, desperate to believe this visit could somehow be different from the past. I had been in my childhood home for 3 days, establishing an uneasy routine of helping care for my mother between her frequent naps when I noticed something strange. My father's reading glasses went missing from the side table in the living room, prompting a household-wide search. No one looked at me accusingly. In fact, Daniel was the one who found them behind the couch cushion, likely fallen there when my father dozed off reading. Later that same day, while helping Daniel prepare dinner, I broached the subject carefully. "That was weird earlier with Dad's glasses," I began. "Everyone seemed so calm about it." Daniel paused his chopping. "Things go missing all the time around here. We are used to it by now." Something about his casual tone made me stop stirring the soup. "What do you mean all the time?" He shrugged. "Just the usual stuff. Keys, small amounts of cash, Mum's earrings last month. Dad thought he might be getting forgetful at first, but it's been happening for years, even after you left." I set down the wooden spoon, my heart racing. "After I left, but I was always blamed for things disappearing." Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "I know. That is why I never told you. It seemed cruel to mention that things still went missing when you were the one always blamed." The revelation stunned me. All those years of accusations of being treated like a thief and items had continued to vanish in my absence. I felt dizzy with the implications. "Has Dad ever apologized?" I asked. "Or Mom?" He shook his head. "You know how they are. Pride and all that, plus things still disappeared, so they probably figured maybe we were both taking things at different times." His casual dismissal of years of psychological abuse ignited my anger. "They destroyed our relationship, Daniel. Made me feel like I was crazy or a compulsive liar. And you're telling me they never even considered they might have been wrong." He had no good answer, just an uncomfortable shrug as he returned to chopping vegetables. But the seed of an idea had been planted in my mind. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the dark living room thinking. If items had continued to disappear for 15 years, through my presence and absence, through different security measures, there had to be an explanation. The seemingly random nature of the thefts. Small items of moderate value, never a full-scale robbery, suggested someone with regular access and knowledge of the house. The next morning, I drove to a nearby electronics store and purchased a small wireless security camera. I placed it discreetly on a bookshelf in the living room, angled to capture most of the room and the entryway to the kitchen and hallway. I told no one, not even Michael, though he noticed my sudden preoccupation. For 3 nights, nothing happened. The camera captured only the normal household activity, my father watching late-night television, Daniel getting water from the kitchen, my occasional trips to check on my mother. On the 4th night, just after 2 a.m, movement triggered the camera's motion sensor. A notification buzzed on my phone, waking me from a light sleep on the couch. I watched in real time as a figure entered through the back door, moving with the confidence of someone familiar with the layout. It was a man in his 30s wearing dark clothing and gloves. He moved directly to my father's desk in the corner of the living room, expertly opening the drawer where my father kept petty cash. The man's face was partially visible in the dim light. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't immediately place him. I sat frozen watching as he pocketed the money and then moved toward the hallway that led to my parents' bedroom, where my mother now slept alone in their king-sized bed, my father having moved to the guest room to give her space with her medical equipment. Instinct overrode my shock. I shook Michael awake, showing him my phone screen without a word. He immediately understood, pulling on his jeans and moving silently toward the hallway to intercept the intruder. "I want to call the police," I whispered. "Not yet," he cautioned. "Let's see who it is first." We confronted the man as he exited my parents' bedroom, something clutched in his hand. In the dim hallway light, I finally recognized him, Thomas Winters, the son of our longtime neighbor, Mrs. Winters, who had occasionally helped with housekeeping when I was young. "What the hell?" he hissed, clearly shocked to find someone awake. The noise woke my father and Daniel, who emerged from their rooms in confusion. When the lights came on, revealing Thomas standing there with my mother's prescription medication and a pair of earrings in his hand, the pieces finally clicked into place. "Thomas," my father exclaimed, "what are you doing in our house?" The next hour passed in a blur. My father called the police while Michael and Daniel ensured Thomas couldn't escape. I sat in stunned silence, watching 15 years of my life suddenly recontextualized. Thomas Winters had been robbing our house, and likely others in the neighborhood, for years. As a teenager, he had started small stealing cash or small items during his mother's cleaning visits. When she stopped working for families, he continued breaking in through the back entrance, familiar enough with each house to know where valuables were kept and when residents were likely to be asleep or away. When the police arrived, Thomas immediately tried to blame me, claiming I had let him in and was his accomplice. The security camera footage on my phone conclusively proved otherwise, showing him entering alone through a window he had unlatched during previous thefts. The officers took him away in handcuffs, promising to return in the morning to take full statements. They advised us to check for other missing items and mentioned they would be getting a warrant to search the Winters' home. I stood on the front porch watching the police car drive away, the red and blue lights reflecting off neighboring houses. 15 years of suspicion of being treated like a criminal in my own home had just been explained by the arrest of a neighbor's son none of us had particularly noticed or suspected. My father approached, standing awkwardly beside me in the pre-dawn darkness. I watched as he struggled to find words, his mouth opening and closing several times before he finally spoke. "I don't know what to say, Amelia. I'm so sorry." The words I had waited half my life to hear landed with a hollow thud. They were simultaneously everything and nothing, too little and too late. The damage had been done. The years of trust and relationship had been lost. "We need to talk," I said finally. "But not right now. I need time to process this." I walked back inside, past Daniel, staring shell-shocked at the family photos on the wall, past Michael, who reached for my hand supportively into the room where my dying mother slept, unaware that the foundation of our family fracture had just been exposed as a terrible, preventable mistake. The following days brought revelations that rewrote my understanding of the past 15 years. The police search of the Winters' home uncovered a trove of stolen items from our house and several others in the neighborhood. In a locked shed behind his mother's house, Thomas had meticulously organized his stolen goods jewelry in fishing tackle boxes, watches in a display case, electronics stacked on shelves. Among the recovered items was my mother's diamond ring, the very first thing that had gone missing, the theft that had cast the initial suspicion on me. Also found were my father's Rolex, the laptop my mother had lost, and dozens of other items I'd been accused of taking over the years. Thomas confessed to a 15-year spree of burglaries, explaining he had started as a teenager, helping his mother clean houses in the neighborhood. He had made copies of keys, learned alarm codes, and noted where valuable items were kept. When his mother stopped working as a housekeeper due to health problems, he continued entering homes through windows or unlocked doors, using his intimate knowledge of each family's habits and schedules. The devastating revelation was how preventable it all had been. Had my parents installed window sensors along with their door security system? Had they reported the continuing thefts to police rather than assuming I was somehow responsible even after I moved away? Had anyone looked beyond the convenient scapegoat in their midst, years of trauma could have been avoided. As my mother weakened, confined now to her hospital bed in the dining room, I sat with her alone one afternoon while my father and Daniel gave statements to the detective handling the case. Her thin hand reached for mine, her fingers cool and papery against my skin. "I thought it was you," she whispered, her voice fragile. "All those years I really believed my own daughter was stealing from us." The raw admission hung in the air between us. Why, I asked the question I'd held inside for so many years, finally escaping. Why was it so easy to believe the worst of me? Her eyes filled with tears. "You were always different from us. Creative, emotional, unpredictable. When things started disappearing, it seemed, possible that you might be acting out in some way. And once we suspected you, every coincidence seemed like confirmation." Her explanation was both illuminating and infuriating. I'd been condemned not for evidence, but for personality, for being the artistic one in a family of logical thinkers. "I missed so much of your life," she continued, tears now spilling down her hollow cheeks. Your graduation, your first art shows. I will never get those moments back. Can you ever forgive me? The question was impossibly complex. Could I forgive the years of suspicion, the destroyed trust? The family bonds shattered beyond repair, yet facing my dying mother, I recognized that forgiveness might be more for my healing than for hers. I am trying, I told her honestly. I cannot promise what that looks like right now. She nodded weakly, seeming to understand this was the most I could offer. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Amelia, but I am so proud of the woman you became, despite us not because of us. Later that week, my father and I had our own painful conversation. Unlike my mother, whose illness perhaps granted her a certain grace in my eyes, my father had been the primary architect of my childhood ostracism. We sat in the backyard, the October air crisp around us, trees blazing with fall colours that reminded me painfully of the art I used to create in this very garden before suspicion tainted everything. I failed you, he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. As a father, my job was to protect you, to believe in you, to be your safe harbour. Instead, I made you feel unsafe in your own home. I cannot undo that damage. I waited for qualifiers, for excuses about how they had been right to suspect me because of my behaviour or personality. None came. For the first time in my memory, my father took full responsibility. I want to try to rebuild something with you, he continued when I didn't immediately respond. Not to replace what was lost, that would be impossible, but perhaps to create something new if you're willing. Even if it's just occasional phone calls. The sincerity in his voice touched something in me I thought had long ago hardened over. I don't know what that looks like yet, I admitted. I built a life without family because I had to. He nodded, accepting this without argument. We can go at your pace. No expectations. Just don't close the door completely, please. Daniel and I had our own reconciliation, awkward and halting. As we sorted through old photographs one evening, he confessed his own guilt. I should have stood up for you, he said, staring at a picture of us as children, arms around each other on a beach vacation. Even when I started to wonder if Mum and Dad were wrong, I went along with it because it was easier. I betrayed you as much as they did. His acknowledgement validated what I'd always felt, but feared might be my own distorted perception that at some point my family had known, or at least suspected, that I might be innocent, but had continued the pattern of blame, because it was simpler than admitting their mistake. In the weeks that followed, we established a fragile new family dynamic. My mother weakened rapidly, the cancer progressing faster than doctors had predicted. I extended my leave of absence from work, calling clients to reschedule projects, unwilling to leave, now that this unexpected opportunity for resolution had appeared. Michael returned to New York briefly to handle his own work commitments, but came back to Boston, his quiet support never wavering. He brought my favourite art supplies from my studio, understanding instinctively that creating had always been my way of processing emotion. In her final days, my mother asked to see my artwork. I showed her my portfolio on a tablet, images of illustrations I'd created for magazines, children's books, and my personal gallery exhibitions. She gazed at each one with wonder, occasionally asking questions about my techniques or inspiration. There is so much emotion in these, she observed, her voice barely audible. You always felt things so deeply. I should have seen that as a gift, not a threat. She died 3 months after my return on a quiet January morning with snow falling gently outside. All of us were present, my father holding one hand, me the other, Daniel, at the foot of the bed. In those final moments, we were, if not healed, at least united in our grief and our commitment to honouring her last wish that we would try to rebuild what had been broken. At the funeral, I met extended family members I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Many approached awkwardly, uncertain how to acknowledge the years of estrangement. Most had heard about Thomas' arrest and the discovered cache of stolen items. Some apologised for believing the worst about me. Others pretended nothing had happened, their discomfort with confronting past judgments evident in their forced cheer. I accepted it all with a new perspective. People believe what makes sense within their existing worldview. My family had created a narrative where I was troubled and dishonest, and they had interpreted every event through that lens. It wasn't personal, though it had certainly felt that way. It was a failure of imagination, of empathy, of willing to consider alternative explanations. As I packed to return to New York, my father helped carry my bags to Michael's rental car. I still had no answer about what our future relationship would look like, but I had promised to call regularly, to visit occasionally. Small steps towards something that might eventually resemble family. In my professional work, I began a new series titled What Was Stolen, a collection exploring themes of trust, false accusation, and redemption. The first piece sold to a major gallery in Manhattan, leading to a solo exhibition that drew critical acclaim. Michael proposed at the exhibition's opening night, my father and brother in attendance, their presence both surreal and healing. The diamond in the engagement ring was not large or flashy, but its clarity and strength reflected the relationship we had built, a relationship based on trust and belief in each other, the very things I had once thought permanently lost to me. We bought a small house outside of Boston the following year, close enough for occasional family dinners, but far enough to maintain boundaries. I converted the sunroom into an art studio, where light streamed in through windows that faced an overgrown garden we slowly tamed together. The healing continued in expected and unexpected ways. Family therapy with my father and brother, individual sessions where I continued working through lingering trust issues. Art classes I began teaching at a community centre, helping others find their voice through creative expression. Some wounds never fully healed. I still counted my possessions, sometimes still felt a flutter of panic when I couldn't immediately locate my keys or wallet. I still struggled with fully trusting new people in my life, always waiting for the moment when suspicion would replace acceptance. But like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold, highlighting rather than hiding the damage, I began to see how my broken places had been filled with something valuable, empathy for others who had been disbelieved, determination to create spaces where trust flourished, appreciation for those who saw me clearly. Sometimes the things that are stolen from us are not physical objects, but intangibles far more precious: trust. Belonging, safety. Unlike material possessions, these cannot be recovered from a shed behind a neighbour's house. They must be rebuilt slowly, deliberately, one small act of faith at a time. Not restored to their original form, but transformed into something new, sometimes stronger for having been broken. Have you ever been falsely accused of something you didn't do? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that redemption is possible even after years of mistrust. Thank you for listening to my journey from blame to healing, and remember, the truth has a way of emerging even when it seems lost forever.